The brown line lurched out of Belmont wheels, shrieking on steel. Monday morning packed the car tight, damp coats, coffee breath, the sour hint of last night's rain. Fluorescent light flattened everyone into the same tired color. Ethan Miller stood by the center pole, turned sideways so his daughter had a pocket of air. His right hand held the rail overhead. His left held Ava's fingers inside his work glove. Ava leaned against his thigh-purple backpack, wedged between their legs, cartoon dinosaurs grinning across the fabric. A paper cup of coffee rode in the crook of Ethan's elbow. It had been hot at home. Now it was just heavy. The lid clicked with every jolt. A smear of dried paint clung to the cup, the kind that never came off his hands. Ava tipped her head back to look at him. Her ponytail sat a little crooked, tied too fast, too early. She didn't complain. She watched the riders with the calm focus of a kid who noticed everything and filed it away. Fullerton. The doors hissed open. A blade of cold cut through the car. Bodies pressed in shoulders bumping boots stepping close. Ethan widened his stance without thinking, a quiet brace. Then she stepped on. Gray coat, plain boots. Hair pinned back neat enough to show effort, loose enough to show she'd lost a fight with the morning. She moved like she expected room, then corrected when none appeared. Her eyes were sharp, but the skin beneath them looked rubbed raw by sleep. Miranda Kincaid stopped just inside the doors, hand finding an overhead strap. No one shifted. A man with a messenger bag stared through her. A seated woman scrolled her phone as if the world behind the screen did not exist. Miranda kept her face neutral, not cold, not warm. Neutral was armor. Still, she breathed out once slow, like she'd been holding air for too long. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, impatient, then buzzed again. She ignored it. Ethan noticed her because Ava noticed her first. Ava's grip tightened. Ethan followed her gaze. He saw the tired set of the shoulders, the way Miranda's fingers trembled on the strap, and then stilled as if she'd ordered them to behave. He moved his coffee to his other arm. Ava looked up at him questioning. Ethan gave her a small nod. "Stand close," he said low. "I am," Ava whispered. Ethan eased through the crowd to the bench seat he had been guarding for 3 stops. He didn't make a show of it. He just stood up and cleared the space. Miranda blinked. Her eyes met his. Something in her expression shifted, a seam loosening. "Please," Ethan said. For a beat she hesitated, as if receiving required permission. The train jerked, and the decision got made for her. She sat coat folding neatly around her knees. Relief softened her shoulders, though she kept her spine straight. The seat was warmer than she expected, as if it still held the shape of the person who'd given it up. Ethan took the spot in front of her, legs planted. He angled his body so Ava stayed tucked into the shelter of his hip. His hand rested on her shoulder, light, steady. "Thank you," Miranda said. Ethan nodded once. "Sure." The car rocked on, rattling through darkness toward the river. Tunnel lights stuttered by the windows. Somewhere down the line, a man laughed too loud. Someone's headphones leaked a tinny beat. The train smelled like wool and metal and other people's mornings. Miranda's gaze drifted, found Ethan's hand again. It wasn't possessive. It was there the way a guardrail was there. Ava leaned into him without thinking, her whole small body trusting the structure he made. Ava reached into her backpack and pulled out a crumpled receipt. She smoothed it on her knee, tongue pressed to her lip in concentration. Then she began folding sharp creases, fast fingers. Ethan glanced down. "What's that?" "A bird," Ava said. "A crane." "With that, it works." Her hands didn't pause. Miranda watched without meaning to. The tiny square of paper turned and tightened corners, becoming wings. Ava's fingers moved like she'd done this 100 times, like it was something that belonged to her. Ethan's coffee lid popped as the car jolted. A thin spill slid down the cup onto his glove. He wiped it against his jacket and kept holding the rail, kept holding Ava steady. No sigh, no complaint, just a small adjustment and on. At Chicago Avenue, the doors opened, and a rush of bodies shoved through. Ava shifted, lost her balance for half a second. Ethan's hand tightened, then eased. "You good?" he murmured. "I'm good," Ava said, still folding. The crowd surged again. A shoulder clipped Ethan's arm. Ava flinched just a flicker. Ethan moved one step, placing himself between her and the door, without looking like he'd moved at all. The motion was practiced quiet, like he'd learned the choreography of keeping a child safe in public spaces. Ava finished the crane and blew softly on the paper as if breath could seal the creases. She held it out. "Hold it," she told him. Ethan tilted his head. "You made it. So you don't lose it?" He took it carefully, the glove too big and clumsy for something that small. He tucked the crane into his jacket pocket, pressing it flat with 2 fingers so it wouldn't crush. Miranda felt a pinch behind her ribs, sharp and quick. She looked down at her own hands in her lap. Clean. Still. Used to signing papers that made people stand or sit, eat or worry. Here she was just another rider who happened to be tired. The announcement crackled for Clark and Lake. Miranda's stop. She stood. The crowd did not part. She threaded through anyway, shoulder brushing, shoulder coat, catching on a backpack strap. A flash of annoyance rose, then died. At the door she turned back. Ethan was bent toward Ava, fixing her scarf where it had twisted. His glove moved with careful patience. Ava watched him like he was the only steady thing in a moving world. Then she pointed at his pocket. "Don't squish it," she said. "I won't," he promised. Ava nodded once, satisfied. She grinned at him, small and proud. Ethan's face warmed for a second, a light that didn't ask for anything. Miranda's mouth opened, as if another word lived there. It didn't come. The door slid open. Cold air rushed in, smelling of wet concrete and brake dust. Miranda stepped onto the platform, and the current of commuters pulled her along. Halfway up the stairs, she stopped and looked back through the glass. For a moment, the train framed them, a tired man standing a little girl close to his side, her dinosaur backpack bright against all the gray. Then the crowd shifted, and the view broke apart. Miranda faced the wind at street level, pulled her coat tighter, and kept walking. Behind her, the brown line clattered away, carrying the warmth of an empty seat and the quiet pressure of a stranger's hand on a child's shoulder. Ethan stayed standing until the doors opened at the stop he needed. Ava hopped down first, backpack bouncing. The platform air hit her cheeks and turned them pink. She skipped 2 tiles ahead and then looked back to make sure he was there. "Stay close," Ethan said. "I am close," she answered, and her tone carried a hint of pride, like she had been close all along. They climbed the stairs to street level with the rest of the commuters. The city smelled like exhaust and wet stone. A bus sighed at the curb. Ethan felt the crane in his pocket when his jacket shifted. The paper pressed against his ribs too light to count as anything, and he still checked it with his fingers. They walked south away from the station, cutting through Bridgeport blocks where the morning moved slower. Row houses sat shoulder to shoulder. Porch lights blinked off one by one. Ava's breath made little ghosts. He could still feel the apartment on his skin, even out here in the open air. The radiator had started knocking before dawn, that hollow metal thud that meant the heat was about to quit again. Ethan had rolled out of bed in the dark and padded across the linoleum in socks, stepping over Ava's stuffed triceratops on the floor. The kitchen light had flickered on yellow and tired. He had knelt by the radiator with his ear close, listening the way he listened at work, patient and exact. A valve coughed steam. He tightened it a quarter turn until the hiss softened. His coffee sat on the counter beside a lunch bag and 2 slices of bread forgotten as he worked. Ava had wandered in with sleep stuck to her eyelashes. She wore Rachel's old sweatshirt, the sleeves too long. For a second, Ethan saw Rachel in the shape of it and had to swallow hard. "Is it fixed?" Ava had asked. "It is behaving," Ethan said. Ava had nodded like that was enough. She climbed onto a chair and watched him pack lunch without commentary, like she was studying how mornings got built. He had tried to smooth Ava's hair with wet fingers. The ponytail ended up a little crooked anyway. Ava only shrugged, then held up a bright purple hair clip Rachel had bought her. Ethan clipped it in place and told himself not to stare at the empty spot on the bathroom counter where Rachel's brush used to sit. Ethan's coffee was lukewarm now. He took a sip anyway. Ava kicked at a patch of salt on the sidewalk, scattering white grit. "Daddy," she said, testing the word. "Yeah. Did you really not know that lady?" Ethan kept his eyes on the crosswalk ahead on a sedan that rolled through without fully stopping. He tightened his grip on Ava's hand. "No." Ava hummed. "She looked like she knew you." Ethan snorted soft. "No one knows me." Ava glanced up fast, serious. "I know you." Ethan swallowed. He nodded once. "You do?" They walked in silence for a block. The school came into view, red brick and chain-link fence. Parents clustered near the gate. A few cars idled with heat-blasting windows fogged. Ethan recognized the small economy of it. Ava slowed. Her sneakers scuffed at the toes. Ethan had scrubbed them last night with a brush and soap until the white showed through again. At the gate, Ethan knelt and zipped Ava's jacket up to her chin. The zipper stuck halfway, and he worked it gently until it slid. Ava held still, chin lifted, letting him fix the world 1 inch at a time. "You got your lunch?" he asked. Ava patted her backpack. "Ham and apple, the baked chips." He tried not to smile. "Okay." She leaned in and hugged him quick and hard. Ethan held her for a breath longer than he should have, then let her go. "I love you," Ava said, already turning. "I love you more than the lake is big," Ethan said. Ava paused and squinted. That is not a number. It is the biggest number I got. She laughed at once, then ran through the gate. Ethan watched until the crowd swallowed her and only the purple backpack flashed between coats. He turned away from the school, hands empty and cold. The morning noise came back. A horn blared. Someone yelled at a dog. The walk back to the station felt longer without Ava. He passed the corner store that sold cigarettes and loose candy. A man outside the store coughed into his sleeve and nodded at Ethan. Ethan nodded back. On the platform, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Hello. A woman's voice, smooth and careful. Mr. Miller. Ethan's shoulders tightened. Who is this? This is Helen Ward. A pause that carried weight. Ava's grandmother. Ethan closed his eyes for half a second. He could picture Helen without trying, the pearl studs, the calm that never cracked. Helen had never raised her voice. She did not have to. What do you want? Ethan asked. I want to speak with you, Helen said. In person. Ethan kept his gaze on the tracks. We already talked. We did, and you asked us to leave. I respected that, but Ava is our granddaughter. We are worried. Ethan's jaw clenched. The crane in his pocket bent under his fingers. She is fine. You live in a one-room apartment, Helen said, still even. You work nights sometimes. You have no family here. If something happens to you, Ethan, what happens to her? The use of his first name was a needle. Helen never called him Ethan when Rachel was alive. What happens, Ethan said, is that I keep going, like I have been. Helen exhaled, almost regretful. We want to help. Ethan laughed once without humor. You want to take her? We want her safe, Helen said. Ethan watched a train flash by on the opposite track, its windows full of faces. She is safe with me. We can meet today. Helen said. Anywhere you like. Ethan stared at the grime on his glove. No, a beat. Ethan. He cut her off. No. He ended the call before she could say anything else. His hand shook for a moment. He shoved the phone back into his pocket and looked up as the brown line rolled indoors, opening with a hiss. He boarded, found a spot near the rear, and stood. The seat beside him stayed empty for a few stops. His legs ached anyway, as if the day had started running before he did. At the loop, Ethan poured out of the station with the crowd. The buildings rose like cliffs. Wind tunneled between them and slapped his face. He pulled his cap lower. His job was in an office tower on Wacker, 38 floors of glass and polished stone. He entered through the service door, past a loading dock that smelled of diesel and damp cardboard. The lobby on the other side was another world. Marble floors, warm air that did not care about the weather, a fountain that whispered to itself. Ethan crossed it in his work boots, hearing the change in the sound under his feet. People in suits flowed around him. A man with a briefcase glanced down at Ethan's jacket and then looked away fast. Ethan did not mind. Some days he liked being part of the background. In the maintenance office, he shrugged off his jacket and hung it on a hook. The paper crane slid out and fluttered to the floor. Ethan froze, then bent, quickly scooped it up before any boot could crush it. Tommy, another tech, looked over. Your kid make that? Ethan smoothed the creases with his thumb. Yeah, nice, Tommy said, and went back to his clipboard. Ethan tucked the crane into the top drawer of his locker, then shut it. He opened his thermos and took a drink of coffee that was fully cold now. He swallowed and grabbed his tool bag. The radio crackled with a call from the 25th floor. A restroom sink was backing up. Ethan clipped the radio to his belt and headed for the service elevator. The doors closed, sealing the polished lobby away. Fluorescent light buzzed overhead as the elevator rose into the building's hidden spine. The service elevator opened on the 25th floor, with a soft chime that sounded embarrassed to be heard. Ethan stepped out into a hallway that smelled like lemon cleaner and overheated carpet glue. Fluorescent panels hummed above him. The office world was waking up behind glass walls, printers coughing, voices clipped and polite. The restroom door was propped open with a trash can. Water had crept out in a thin sheet across the tile, catching the ceiling light like a dull mirror. A young woman in a blazer stood with her arms folded tight, trying not to look annoyed and failing. It's gross, she said, as if Ethan might not notice. Ethan set his tool bag down and crouched beside the sink cabinet. He twisted the shut-off valve and listened. The pipes knocked once, then went quiet. It'll stop, he said. She watched him work, the way people watched a mechanic, with a mix of impatience and relief. He pulled a drain snake from his bag and fed it into the pipe inch by inch, feeling for the snag. When it caught, he turned his wrist and drew it back. A wad of wet paper and something dark came out with it, clinging and stubborn. The woman made a face. Oh my God. Ethan dropped it into a trash liner. Give it 5 minutes and it'll be fine. She exhaled, not quite grateful, not quite dismissive. Thanks. Ethan nodded. He wiped his hands on a rag and stood. The day would be a chain of small fixes like this. Quiet problems, quiet repairs. Nobody would remember his name unless something broke again. He rode the elevator down, and the lobby swallowed him in warm air and marble shine. The fountain in the center kept whispering to itself. A man in a tailored coat stepped around Ethan without looking at him, eyes fixed on the glass doors on the street on whatever waited beyond. Ethan went out at the service exit and crossed the sidewalk to the loading dock for a box of light bulbs. The wind off the river cut through his jacket. He turned his collar up and kept moving. Across the city, far above the traffic and the river wind, Miranda Kincaid stood in a room that did not have drafty corners. Her office sat high in the Kincaid Meridian Tower glass on two sides. The city spread out like a grid of decisions. From this height, cars looked like small, dark beads moving in neat lines. People were only implied. Sophia Park hovered near the door, with a tablet pressed to her chest. Sophia's hair was smooth and glossy, her posture calm in a way that was practiced. She spoke with the kind of voice that made chaos sound scheduled. "Your 8:30 is ready," Sophia said. "Legal is here about the Pilsen permits, and the board packet is on your desk." Miranda nodded without turning. Her hand rested on the window glass. It was colder than she expected. "How is your head?" Sophia asked carefully. Miranda's reflection stared back sharp cheekbones, lips that forgot how to soften. "My head is fine." Sophia shifted her weight. "You took the train." It was not a question, but it carried one anyway. Miranda finally turned. "My driver was sick. The backup got stuck near the Kennedy. I had a meeting." Sophia did not argue. She had learned over years which explanations were invitations and which were walls. "Do you want security adjusted for next time?" Miranda paused. The words "next time" sat in the air like a coat she did not want to put on. "No," Miranda said, "not for that." Sophia's eyes flicked quick as a camera shutter. "Understood." Miranda walked to her desk. The board packet lay centered, edges aligned, too perfect. A fountain pen waited on top like an obedient tool. On the corner of the desk sat a ceramic mug with coffee that had gone dark. Miranda did not remember pouring it. She opened the packet and forced her eyes onto the numbers. Revenue projections, cost curves, a timeline broken into clean columns. It should have been satisfying the way a solved puzzle was satisfying. Instead, her mind slid sideways back to the train car. A man standing with his body angled like a shield. A child folding paper into a bird. A seat warming under her offered without flattery, without negotiation. The taste of relief she had not earned. Miranda pressed her fingers against the paper, as if she could flatten the memory out of her head. "Ms. Kincaid," Sophia said softer now. "They're waiting." Miranda walked into the boardroom, where the table was polished enough to catch the ceiling lights. Faces turned toward her in unison. There was no morning fatigue here, only alertness manufactured and maintained. "Miranda," the general counsel said, "we need your sign-off on the Pilsen demolition." Miranda sat at the head of the table. The chair accepted her like it belonged to her. It always did. A screen at the far end showed a map, blocks of color, lines and labels. In the middle, a rectangle marked redevelopment site, as if a neighborhood could be reduced to a shape. "We have the permits aligned," legal continued. "The relocation stipend meets requirements. We can start clearing in 6 weeks if we move." Miranda stared at the rectangle. She imagined it as a clean slate. Then she imagined it as someone's kitchen table, someone's child sleeping on a couch, someone's old man sitting by a window with the radio on low. She did not know why the images came. They usually did not. "Where do they go?" Miranda asked. The room went still for half a beat, not stunned, just recalibrating. "The residence," the general counsel said. Miranda nodded once. A man from finance cleared his throat. "The stipend covers 3 months' average rent in the adjacent area. We have a partnership with a management group to offer units at a discounted rate for qualified applicants." Qualified applicants, adjacent area, discounted rate, words that landed without weight. Miranda glanced around the table. People watched her face, waiting for a cue. They did not look worried. They looked curious, like they had found a new variable. Sophia sat behind her silent. Miranda felt the chair under her, the seat that always belonged to her. The seat she never thought about. She thought of the train. She thought of standing. She thought of how quickly her body had accepted sitting down like it was owed. Miranda leaned back and the chair moved with her, smooth, effortless. "Let's review the community impact assessment again," she said. The finance man blinked. "We already reviewed it." "Review it again," Miranda said, calm. No one argued. They moved to the next slide. Charts appeared, bars and bullet points. The assessment mentioned schools and traffic and retail opportunity. It did not mention names. It did not mention the way cold wind hit your face when you climbed the wrong stairs because you were forced to move. Miranda listened, her expression neutral. She asked 3 questions that sounded like routine. They were not. By the end of the meeting, approvals were delayed, not canceled, just slowed by a thin layer of friction Miranda had introduced. When the room emptied, Sophia stayed behind. Sophia set her tablet on the table. You asked about where they go. Miranda watched the tablet screen go dark. Yes. Sophia chose her words. Do you want a site visit? Miranda almost said no. Her calendar was a wall of obligations, each one leaned against the next. She had built her life that way on purpose. She thought of the man's hand on his daughter's shoulder. Light, steady, like it was the only thing that mattered. I want a site visit, Miranda said. Sophia nodded as if she had expected this. This afternoon, Miranda looked at her schedule in her mind, the stacked blocks of time. She saw herself moving through them like a machine. Cancel my afternoon, Miranda said. Sophia's eyes widened just a fraction. Everything? Miranda nodded. Everything. Sophia hesitated. Do you want me to tell them you are unwell? Miranda's mouth tightened. She could taste the lie before it formed. Tell them I am thinking. Sophia did not smile, but something in her face softened a recognition. Okay. After Sophia left, Miranda sat alone in the boardroom. The chairs around the table stood empty, pushed in neatly. She ran her fingers along the edge of her seat. Smooth leather, no scuffs, no history. On her way back to her office, she passed a wall of framed photographs, ribbon cuttings, groundbreakings, handshakes with men whose names were forgotten by everyone but the plaques. Miranda appeared in every frame, composed and victorious. She did not look tired in any of them. In her office, she opened a drawer and found the Metro card she had used that morning. The plastic was scratched. The corner was bent. She held it between her fingers and turned it over. For years, it had been a backup plan, an emergency artifact. It did not belong in her world, and yet it had gotten her where she needed to be through a city that did not move aside. Her phone buzzed again. A notification, another message, another demand. Miranda set the phone face down and stood. She walked to the coat rack, slipped into her gray coat, the plain one. She did not reach for jewelry. She did not call down for a car. Sophia met her at the door with a folder. I can have a driver ready in 10. Miranda shook her head. No driver. Sophia's eyes searched Miranda's face, measuring. Security. Miranda pictured 2 men in black coats on a train platform, their presence like a siren. She pictured the man with the tired eyes and the little girl, and how a siren would have changed everything. No, Miranda said. Not today. Sophia nodded once. I'll meet you at the site. Miranda stepped into the hall. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. She stood alone in the mirrored box, watching her own reflection shift with the motion. At the ground floor, the lobby opened like a mouth of light and marble. Outside, the wind hit her hard. It carried the river and the smell of traffic. It tugged at her coat and made her eyes water. Miranda walked 2 blocks, heels clicking on the sidewalk. No one looked at her twice. People moved around her, not for her. Past her. She felt a strange looseness in her chest, something between irritation and relief. At the station entrance, the air changed. The smell of metal and old electricity rose up to meet her. She followed the crowd down the stairs, her hand brushing the rail. The platform was crowded but ordinary. A man argued quietly into his phone. A teenager bounced on the balls of his feet, music leaking from his earbuds. An older woman held a grocery bag close to her thigh like it was fragile. Miranda stood near the edge and waited. The tracks below vibrated faintly, a distant promise. When the train arrived, it arrived loud, a rush of wind and sound. Doors opened, people spilled out, people spilled in. Miranda boarded and found a spot near the middle. There were seats. She did not take them. She held an overhead strap and let the car carry her, swaying with strangers. She watched hands. She watched faces. She watched how people made space for children, for strollers, for no one at all. A few stops later, the city changed above ground. Brick rows gave way to low storefronts, murals, signs in Spanish, a street vendor setting up a cart. The train windows flashed slices of life too fast to read fully. Miranda got off near the site. The air smelled different here. Oil and frying dough, cold concrete, a hint of cilantro from somewhere close. She walked toward the fenced lot where orange mesh flapped in the wind. A backhoe sat idle, its arm raised like it was frozen mid-gesture. On the fence, a hand-painted sign read, "Keep our homes," in thick black letters. Miranda stood still for a moment, coat pulled tight, hair tugged loose at the edges. Across the street, a building with wide windows glowed warm against the gray day. Inside, children's voices rose and fell, bright and messy. Miranda's gaze caught on movement behind the glass, a small figure darting past with a flash of purple. Across the street, the fenced lot sat open to the sky, a rectangle of dirt and broken concrete. Orange mesh snapped in the wind. A hand-painted sign clung to the chain link. "Keep our homes." Miranda stood a moment at the corner coat, pulled-tight eyes stinging from cold. The building beside the lot glowed through wide windows. Inside, movement flashed. A child's laugh hit the glass and bounced back. She crossed with the light and pushed through the door. A small bell chimed overhead. Warm air rushed her face thick with cocoa and pencil shavings. The lobby was narrow and lived in. Flyers layered the walls. Someone had taped up drawings that curled at the edges, bright sunstick figure families, a lake the color of spilled paint. A plastic bin by the entrance held mittens without pears and hats with frayed pom-poms. A folding table sat near the hall. A man with a clipboard looked up. His hoodie had a faint stain on one sleeve. His eyes were kind but alert. "Can I help you?" he asked. Gab asked. Miranda felt the old reflex to say her name and watched the room rearrange around it. She swallowed it. "I was nearby," she said. "I wanted to see what this place is." He studied her for a beat, not rude, just careful. "I'm Noah," he said. "Noah Alvarez. Reading hour is going on right now. If you want to watch, stand along the wall. Kids get distracted if you take a front seat." Miranda nodded. "Thank you." The hallway smelled faintly of bleach and wet coats. Children's art lined the cinder block taped at odd angles. Miranda softened her steps until her heels made only a dull tap on the scuffed floor, then stopped at a glass wall. The back room was full of small chairs. 15 kids sat in a loose circle, coats still on knees bouncing. Parents lingered near the door with tired eyes, and phones turned face down like they were trying to give themselves a break too. In the middle sat the man from the train. Ethan Miller held a picture book open on his knees. His work roughness was still there in his hands and jaw, but here his shoulders sat lower as if he could breathe. Ava sat near his feet, purple dinosaur backpack on the floor beside her. The same backpack from the subway. Miranda felt her stomach drop the way it did when a thought you could not explain suddenly became real. She pressed to the wall unseen. Ethan turned a page and lifted his eyebrows. "All right," he said. "This part matters." A boy with a scraped nose called out, "You always say that." Ethan looked at him. "And am I lying?" The kids laughed. Ethan waited until the sound faded on its own. No shushing, no scolding, just patience. He held up the cover. "A chair for my mother." Miranda's throat tightened at the word chair, simple and ordinary. She thought of her boardroom seat, leather and silent. She thought of the subway bench, warm from a stranger. She thought of how her body had accepted sitting down like it was owed. Ethan began to read. He gave each character a different voice, not big, just enough. The mother sounded steady. The grandmother sounded amused. The child sounded hopeful without being sweet. A toddler on a parent's lap reached for the page. Ethan leaned back a fraction and smiled at the toddler like it was fine. The parent mouthed, "Sorry." Ethan shook his head once easy. He paused at an illustration and tipped the book toward the circle. "What do you see?" Ava's hand rose fast, then lowered halfway like she remembered to share the air. Ethan nodded once at her. "The jar is almost full," Ava said, "but they still have to wait." Ethan's eyes softened. "Yeah," he said, "they still have to wait." A boy blurted, "Why don't they just buy it?" Ethan did not correct him. He asked, "With what?" The boy's cheeks warmed. He shrugged. "I don't know." "That's okay," Ethan said. "Sometimes you don't know until someone shows you." A girl beside Ava pulled a crumpled receipt from her pocket and started folding it. Ava noticed dug into her backpack and slid a neat stack of paper squares into the girl's hand. No words, just an offer. Their heads bent together. Small fingers creased paper into wings. Miranda watched the motion, the quiet seriousness of it. She remembered her own hands as a girl, folding notes in the back of class, making shapes out of boredom. She remembered her father's hands, too. Thick fingers cracked knuckles pushing a mower in Ohio, while neighbors waved from porches. She had not thought about that in a long time. Ethan kept reading, his voice steady over the soft scrape of folding. Coins clinked into a jar. A family counted what they had, not what they wished for. The room held still in the way kids only do when something feels real. When he reached the last page, he closed the book slowly. Silence hung for a beat. Then the children clapped, uneven and sincere. "All right," Ethan said. "Chairs back. Then you can pick a book to take home." The circle broke apart. Chairs scraped. Parents stretched. A boy darted past with a library book hugged to his chest. Someone bumped a table, and a stack of crayons spilled like bright little bones. Ava jumped up and began stacking chairs, tongue stuck out in effort. Ethan moved through the room, helping smaller kids with zippers and mittens. He did it without making it a performance. His attention stayed on whoever was in front of him, one child at a time. Miranda noticed the way he listened, even when the words were messy. She stayed by the wall until the room thinned. Noah appeared beside her, quiet. "That's Ethan," he said. "Volunteer. Reads like he means it." Miranda kept her eyes on Ethan's hands. "He does." Noah glanced at her. "You know him." Miranda shook her head. "Not really." Noah accepted that and stepped away to answer someone calling his name. Ethan finished stacking the last chair and turned. His gaze landed on Miranda. No recognition, just a plain look like he took people as they came. "Hi," he said, walking over. "You were watching." "I was," Miranda said. Her mouth felt dry. "You're very good at it." He gave a small shrug. "The book helps." "It doesn't turn its own pages," Miranda said. A quick smile tugged at his mouth, then settled. "Thanks." She held out her hand before she overthought it. "I'm Miranda." Ethan took it. His grip was firm and careful, like he knew the difference between strength and force. "Ethan," he said. "Nice to meet you." Ava appeared at his side as if summoned by the sound of adult voices. She tugged his sleeve. "Dad," she said. "Hot chocolate." Ethan looked down. "Now?" "The good kind," Ava insisted. Her eyes slid to Miranda, curious and steady. Miranda met the child's gaze. The ponytail was still slightly crooked. The purple clip kept it together anyway. Ethan looked back at Miranda. "We should go," he said. "Nice meeting you." "You too," Miranda said. Ava reached into her pocket and pulled out a paper crane. Plain paper, tight folds, wings sharp. She held it out. "For you," Ava said. Miranda took it. The paper was warm from Ava's hand. The weight was almost nothing, and her fingers curled around it like it mattered. "Thank you," Miranda said, and the words came out quieter than she expected. Ava smiled once satisfied, then swung her backpack on. Ethan rested his hand on her back as they walked toward the lobby. Noah called goodbye. Ava called it louder. The bell over the door chimed again, and cold air rushed in after them. Miranda stood where they had been listening to the room settle. Somewhere down the hall, a child laughed. Somewhere outside, a truck backfired, sharp and ugly. She slipped the crane into her coat pocket and stepped out into the wind. Across the sidewalk, Ethan and Ava were already halfway down the block. Ava hopped over a crack in the pavement, then grabbed his hand again. Ethan said something that made her grin. He did not look back. The crowd folded them into the street like they belonged there. The chain-link fence waited across the street, orange mesh fluttering. "Keep our homes" looked harsher from this side. Miranda crossed to the curb and stopped. She looked from the warm windows of the community center to the empty space behind the fence, as if her eyes could bridge it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, impatient. She did not answer. Her fingers closed around the paper crane until the creases pressed into her skin. Then she loosened her grip and walked on, blending into the foot traffic at the corner, the little paperweight tapping softly against her palm. Miranda walked until her lungs stopped burning from the cold and her hands stopped shaking inside her pockets. The street around the lot stayed busy, people moving with their heads down, collars up, eyes narrowed against the wind. Cars hissed over wet pavement. A bus groaned at the curb and exhaled a cloud of diesel. She reached the corner and finally pulled the paper crane out of her pocket. It sat in her palm like a dare. Plain white paper, crisp folds, wings sharp enough to cut a line in the air if it could fly. Something a child made in minutes, something she could not buy in any store on Michigan Avenue. Miranda turned it over once, thumb tracing the crease where the neck met the body. She tried to picture Ava's hands making those folds. She tried to picture the father watching her do it. There had been no performance in the moment, no look around to see who noticed. It was just a small exchange offered and taken, then gone. Her phone buzzed again. She did not answer. A black sedan eased to the curb a half block away. Sophia stepped out, coat-buttoned hair, slicked back eyes scanning. Sophia saw Miranda, then walked toward her at a brisk pace without hurrying, as if she could control the air by refusing to rush. "Are you all right?" Sophia asked. Miranda slipped the crane back into her pocket and let her hand stay there, fingers curled around it. "I am fine." Sophia looked past Miranda to the fence. The orange mesh snapped like a flag. "This is the site." "Yes." Sophia's gaze flicked to the community center windows. Kids moved behind the glass flashes of color and bouncing energy. Sophia kept her expression neutral, but her eyes softened for a breath before she locked them down again. "You went inside," Sophia said. "I watched," Miranda replied. Sophia waited. Miranda gave her nothing else. A gust shoved at Miranda's coat. She planted her feet and stared at the "Keep Our Homes" sign until the letters blurred. Sophia spoke carefully. The legal team is asking if the permit schedule is still on track. Miranda's hand tightened in her pocket, paper pressed into skin. Tell them I want additional review on relocation logistics. Sophia nodded as if that were simply another item. Understood. Miranda kept her eyes on the fence. Who runs that center? Sophia's eyebrows lifted slightly. The community center. Yes, I can find out, Sophia said. Miranda turned finally and looked at Sophia, quietly. Sophia held her gaze. Quietly means no direct contact, no press, no cameras, no staff visits. Correct. Sophia nodded once. All right. Miranda walked toward the sedan. Her heels clicked on cracked sidewalk. She felt the weight of the crane with every step, a small tapping against her palm, as if it were reminding her she had hands too. Inside the car, the heat hit her face. She breathed it in and tasted the faint scent of leather and clean fabric. Sophia slid into the front passenger seat. Do you want to go back to the office? Miranda stared out the window at the center warm and bright against the gray. Yes. The car pulled away. The fence disappeared behind traffic. At the same time, 2 blocks from the center, Ethan walked with Ava toward the corner cafe that sold hot chocolate thick enough to count as a meal. Ava bounced on the balls of her feet, hands stuffed into her pockets, scarf flapping. She talked the whole way, jumping from the rabbit in the story, to the girl who had folded paper beside her, to the way one little boy had kept calling the chair a throne. He said it like it was a joke, Ava explained, but he meant it. Ethan grunted, amused. Most jokes mean something. Ava glanced up. You tell jokes? Ethan gave her a look. I am hilarious. Ava snorted. No, you are not. They reached the cafe. Warmth poured out when the door opened. The air smelled like espresso and sugar and wet wool drying. A bell chimed overhead. People sat with laptops and tired faces, hands wrapped around cups like they were holding on. Ava leaned close to Ethan. Can I get the one with whipped cream? Ethan glanced at the menu board, then at his wallet in his mind. He felt the familiar pinch. He reached for it anyway. One, he said, with whipped cream. Ava's grin flashed. Yes. They sat at a small table by the window. The glass fogged where Ava's breath hit it. Outside, the street moved cars, crawling people, hurrying the sky low and heavy. The hot chocolate came in a wide mug, steam rising slow. Ava stirred it with a spoon and watched the swirl like it was a science experiment. Ethan wrapped his hands around his own coffee cup. It was not hot anymore. It never was. Ava took a sip and sighed with theatrical satisfaction. Then she looked at Ethan. Her eyes were sharp too, sharp for 7. That lady, she said. Ethan kept his face blank. What about her? She looked tired, Ava said. Like you. Ethan swallowed. I am not that tired. Ava tilted her head. You are? Ethan tried to smile. Okay, maybe I am. Ava's spoon tapped the mug once. But you still got up. Ethan watched her whipped cream melt into the dark. He did not answer right away. Ava pushed gently. Why? Ethan looked out the window. A woman across the street tugged a child's mitten back on fingers, working fast, impatient, but loving. Ethan's throat tightened. Some people are carrying a lot, he said. Ava nodded as if that were a solid answer. Then she asked the question anyway. How do you know? You do not, Ethan said. Ava's brows drew together. Then you could help the wrong person. Ethan shrugged. Maybe. Ava stared at him, waiting for a better explanation. Ethan took a breath. Helping does not require perfect information, he said. It requires paying attention. Ava considered that, then went back to her mug as if she had filed the thought away for later. When the seat left the cafe, Ava skipped twice, then took Ethan's hand again. Ethan held on. The wind slapped their faces. Ava did not flinch. She just pulled her hood tighter. By the time Ethan dropped Ava off at home with the neighbor, who watched her after school, his phone buzzed again. This time he did not answer. He went to his building job, rode the service elevator, fixed what needed fixing. At lunch, he ate a sandwich in the maintenance room with Tommy, who talked about a game Ethan did not watch. Ethan nodded at the right moments, kept his eyes on his hands. His fingers kept wanting to check his jacket pocket for the crane, even though he had left it in his locker drawer. That evening, when he returned to the apartment, the radiator was quiet for once. Ava sat at the table coloring a dinosaur with a marker that had lost its cap. The neighbor waved goodbye from the doorway. Ethan washed dishes, packed a lunch for tomorrow, signed Ava's reading log. He did not sit down until Ava was in bed, and the apartment had settled into its small night noises. He opened the drawer where he kept bills. Envelopes fanned out like thin threats. Rent, electric, gas. A notice from Ava's school sat on top, folded, twice sealed with a red stamp. He stared at it for a moment before opening it. St. Bridget Academy, tuition adjustment notice. Effective next semester. Numbers swam. Ethan read them again slower. The increase was not huge on paper. In his life, it was a wall. He set the letter down and rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hand. He heard Rachel's voice in his head, light and firm, telling him to breathe. He breathed anyway, even though it did not solve anything. His phone buzzed. Another message from a number he did not recognize. He ignored it. He made a list on the back of a grocery receipt. Cut streaming service. Skip the occasional takeout. Pick up an extra shift on weekends if he could find childcare. Ask the school office about payment plans. He wrote until the ink ran out. When he was done, he sat in the dim kitchen and listened to the building. Pipes clicked. A distant television laughed. Somewhere a baby cried. Ethan stood and checked on Ava. She slept on her side, one arm flung over her stuffed triceratops. Her mouth was open, a little breath, soft and even. The purple hair clip sat on the nightstand. Ethan stayed in the doorway longer than he meant to. 2 days later, Miranda sat in her office with the paper crane on her desk. She had set it there like an object that belonged among her documents. It did not. It looked out of place against polished wood and aligned folders. That made it harder to ignore. Sophia stepped in with a thin file. "The community center is called Pilsen Family Hub," Sophia said. "Director is Noah Alvarez. They have reading programs twice a week after school support job placement referrals." Miranda did not look up, and the man. Sophia's mouth tightened just a hint. "Ethan Miller, volunteer reader, works maintenance in the Loop." Miranda's pen paused over a notepad. "You found that quickly." Sophia met her eyes. "You asked quietly. Quietly can still be thorough." Miranda nodded once. "Does he need anything?" Sophia hesitated. "Everyone needs something." Miranda did not smile. "Not that." Sophia opened the file a fraction, then stopped as if she were deciding how much to say. "He is a single father. Wife died several years ago. Daughter attends St. Bridget Academy." Miranda's fingers went still. "Private school." "Parish school," Sophia corrected. "Not elite. Tuition-based." Miranda's gaze flicked to the crane. She pictured Ava's backpack, the scuffed sneakers, the ponytail held together by a clip. Parish school made sense. Small class sizes. A place that watched your kid when you could not. Sophia continued. "Tuition goes up next semester. It is not public information yet, but the school board has circulated notices." Miranda leaned back in her chair. Leather creaked. The chair held her without complaint. Sophia watched her carefully. "Do you want to donate to the center? We can do it properly. A check, a press release if you want." Miranda looked at Sophia like she had not understood. "No press." "All right," Sophia said. "A private grant then." Miranda's hand drifted toward the crane. She did not touch it. "I do not want him to know." Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly. "You want it anonymous?" "Yes." Sophia took a breath. Anonymous donations can still land like control. They can feel like someone is pulling strings in the dark. Miranda's jaw tightened. "It is help." Sophia did not argue. Sophia rarely argued. She simply said, "What kind of help?" Miranda's mind went to the simplest lever. Money, the tool she had used for decades to move the world. "Tuition," Miranda said. Sophia's face stayed composed, but her gaze sharpened. "For the daughter." "Yes." Sophia nodded slowly. "We can do that through an education support fund. No direct connection, no letter from you. It will look like scholarship aid." Miranda felt a small relief, thin and bright. "Do it." Sophia turned to leave, then paused. "A mountain." Miranda did not hesitate. 3 years. Sophia blinked. "That is substantial." Miranda's voice stayed even. "Do it." Sophia nodded and left the room. Miranda sat alone with the crane. She stared at it until the folds blurred. Her phone buzzed with another message from legal. She ignored it. She opened her desk drawer, pulled out a checkbook she almost never used, and wrote a number that made most families gasp. Her hand did not shake. It never did on paper. When she was done, she set the pen down and stared at the clean signature. It looked like any other signature she had written. The next week, Ethan came home to an envelope from St. Bridget Academy. He saw the school logo and felt his stomach tighten. He set his keys in the bowl by the door, washed his hands, then picked up the envelope like it might bite. Ava stood beside him, craning her neck. "Is that from school?" "Yeah," Ethan said. Ava's eyes brightened. "Did I do something bad?" Ethan almost laughed. "No, I do not think so." He tore the envelope open carefully, pulling the paper out in one smooth motion. The letterhead was crisp. The language was formal. He read the first paragraph twice. His vision tunneled. He sat down hard on the kitchen chair, the same old chair with one leg that wobbled if you leaned back. Ava climbed onto the chair across from him, feet swinging. "What is it?" Ava asked. Ethan swallowed. "It is a scholarship." Ava blinked, like a prize. "Not exactly," Ethan said. He read again. The letter said Ava had been selected for need-based tuition assistance through the St. Bridget Student Support Fund. The award covered full tuition for the next 3 academic years. The letter congratulated her on her character and effort. It mentioned nothing about who paid. It asked for a signature confirming acceptance. Ava leaned forward. "So we can keep going there." Ethan stared at the words. Full tuition. 3 years. It was the wall disappearing overnight. Ava slapped her hand softly on the table. "Yes." Ethan did not move. Ava's smile faltered. "Dad?" Ethan forced air into his lungs. He could feel his pulse in his fingertips. He looked at Ava's face bright with hope, and something inside him flinched. "Why are you sad?" Ava asked. "I am not sad," Ethan said too quickly. Ava stared at him. She had Rachel's eyes. They did not let go. Ethan lowered his voice. "I just did not expect it." Ava tilted her head. "Did you ask for it?" "No." Ava's smile returned smaller now. "Then it is like magic." Ethan looked at the paper again. Magic did not come with letterhead. He signed nothing. He folded the letter and set it on the table. Ava reached for it. Ethan covered it with his hand. "Not yet," he said. Ava's brows pulled together. "But it says yes." Ethan's throat tightened. "I need to make a call." He stood and walked to the sink pretending he needed water. He turned on the faucet and watched it run. The sound filled the room and kept his hands busy. He called the school office the next morning during his break. The receptionist congratulated him. Her voice was cheerful and tired. "Who donated?" Ethan asked. "Upon did this deed?" A pause. Paper shuffling. "The fund, sir." "I know that," Ethan said, keeping his tone calm. "Who?" Another pause. "We do not release donor information." Ethan looked at his boots scuffed with yesterday's work. "I need to know if there are conditions." "There are no conditions," she said. Ethan did not believe in free money. He believed in valves and pipes and cause and effect. Someone paid. Someone wanted something even if what they wanted was only the feeling of wanting. He hung up and stared at the break room wall until his coffee cooled past cold and into bitter. That afternoon he went to his locker and opened the top drawer. The paper crane sat there where he had left it, wings flattened. He picked it up, turned it over in his rough hands, and felt the crease lines press into his skin. He did not know why his mind went back to the woman at the center, the one who had called herself Miranda. He did not know why the thought lodged there and refused to move. He put the crane back shut the drawer and kept working. But the letter waited at home on the kitchen table, crisp and polite, promising relief with no explanation. The letter stayed on the kitchen table for 3 days, held down by a salt shaker like it might try to float away. Ethan walked past it the way you walk past a loose stair in your own building. You adjust your step. You do not look down too long. Ava looked at it every morning while she ate cereal. Her spoon clinked against the bowl in a steady rhythm. "Can we sign it yet?" she asked on the second day. Ethan poured milk and watched it foam. "Not yet." Ava narrowed her eyes. "Why not?" Ethan kept his voice light. "Because your dad is slow." Ava did not smile. "You are not slow. You fix stuff fast." Ethan swallowed. "Some stuff." Ava leaned across the table and tapped the paper with one finger. "This is good stuff." Ethan covered her hand with his gentle. Her fingers were warm. His were cold even indoors. "I just need to understand," he said. Ava sighed, dramatic. "Grown-ups always need to understand." Ethan almost laughed. It came out as a breath. That night, after Ava fell asleep, Ethan sat at the table with the letter and a notepad. The apartment was quiet, in the way it only got quiet after midnight when the building settled, and even the pipes seemed to rest. The radiator clicked once like a small reminder. He read the scholarship letter again. It kept saying the same thing. Support fund, award, no conditions, acceptance form attached, a place for his signature. Ethan turned the page over and stared at the blank back. He thought about money the way he thought about water. It always came from somewhere. If it showed up in your sink, it came through a line you could trace. He picked up his phone and called the school again. Different receptionist this time, the voice older, more guarded. "I am not asking for a name," Ethan said. "I am asking if there is a reason." A pause. "Sir, the support fund receives donations throughout the year." "I get that," Ethan said. He kept his tone even. He could feel his heart in his throat. Was this decided by a committee, or did a donation come in that covered it? More silence, paper shuffling, a keyboard tap. It was processed after a restricted gift was received. Ethan's stomach tightened. "Restricted how?" "Earmarked for tuition assistance," she said quickly. "For current students. Need-based." Ethan closed his eyes. Need-based. The phrase sounded clean. It did not make him feel clean. "Does the donor have contact with the school?" he asked. "No," she said. Too fast. Like she had been told to say it fast. "No direct contact." Ethan stared at the salt shaker and imagined the hand that had dropped it there. Imagined how easily a hand with money could make his life shift. "Thank you," he said, and ended the call. He sat in the kitchen and listened to the fridge hum. In the bedroom, Ava turned in her sleep and mumbled something about dinosaurs. Ethan did not move until the house stopped feeling like it was tilting. In the morning, he went to work with the letter folded in his jacket pocket. It felt wrong against his chest, like carrying something sharp. At the building on Wacker, he fixed a broken stall latch, replaced a flickering light, tightened a loose hinge on a conference room door. He did his job the way he always did, steady and quiet. But his mind kept walking back to the community center, to the woman with the gray coat, to the paper crane in her pocket. During lunch, Ethan called Tommy, but not to talk about sports. "You know anyone at St. Bridget? Be a man or a jid?" Ethan asked on his skimmer. "Skistonese as a jacket in this in any genais to grip besipar. Send my mamni bisheni shayskio." Tommy chewed, then swallowed. "My cousin's kid goes there." "Do me a favor," Ethan said. "Ask your cousin if the school got some big donation recently." Tommy's brow furrowed. "You in trouble?" "No," Ethan says, "I am trying not to be." Tommy watched him for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, I can ask." Ethan hung up and stared at his sandwich until the hunger passed. That afternoon, he took the service elevator down to the basement mechanical room. The building's belly smelled like dust and hot metal. Pipes ran overhead like a map. Ethan stood in the hum and tried to quiet the noise in his own head. He was tightening a clamp when his radio crackled. "Ethan," the supervisor said, "you got a minute?" Ethan wiped his hands and went upstairs to the maintenance office. The supervisor, a man named Dennis, who always looked like he was late, held out a clipboard. "Tenant Relations wants you to check the lobby fountain," Dennis said. "It's making noise." Ethan walked through the lobby and approached the fountain. It burbled and hissed like it had a secret. He knelt and lifted the small access panel. Behind him, the lobby doors opened. Cold air rushed in. He heard heels crisp measured, not hurried. The sound stopped near the security desk. Ethan did not look up right away. He did not want to. He finished tightening a valve, then stood and turned. Miranda Kincaid was in the lobby. She wore the same plain gray coat, but up close it did not read as plain. The fabric was heavier. The stitching was careful. She stood with her hands clasped, listening to the guard explain something. Sophia stood a step behind her tablet, held close eyes, scanning the room like it was a puzzle. Miranda's gaze slid across the lobby and landed on Ethan. For a beat, her face stayed neutral. Then recognition flickered quick and clean. Ethan's chest went tight. He saw the subway again the moment she sat down. He saw the warm room of the community center, Ava handing her a crane. He saw the letter on his table. Miranda's eyes dropped to his work gloves, then back to his face. Her mouth opened slightly as if she might say his name. She did not. She turned back to the guard and nodded. Ethan felt his body go still, the kind of stillness that comes before a pipe bursts. He forced himself to look away and return to the fountain. His fingers moved with the steady habit of work, but his mind had already made the connection. It was not proof. It was enough. That evening, Tommy called him. "Cousin says yes," Tommy said. "School got a donation through some education support thing. Big enough that the office ladies were buzzing. Nobody knows who." Ethan's throat tightened. "Did they say anything else?" Tommy hesitated. "She said the paperwork came through a law firm downtown. One of those fancy ones." She heard a name. "Kincaid." Ethan closed his eyes. The word landed heavy. "All right," Ethan said. "You okay?" Tommy asked. Ethan stared at the wall. Yeah, he was not. The next Tuesday, Ethan took Ava to the community center after school. The air had warmed a little. Snow melted into dirty slush along the curb. Ava hopped around puddles like they were traps. Inside, the center smelled like cocoa and crayons again. Noah waved from behind the folding table. "Hey, Miller," Noah called. "You're early." Ethan nodded. Traffic was light. Noah smiled like that meant something good. "Kids are in the back. Reading room's open." Ava took off toward the hall. "I'm going to help Ms. Lydia with the little kids," she announced without stopping. "Okay," Ethan called after her. "No running." Ava slowed down for 2 steps, then forgot. Ethan watched her disappear, then looked at Noah. "Someone been around here?" Ethan asked, voice casual. Noah glanced up. "What kind of someone?" Ethan kept his face blank. "A lady, gray coat." Noah's eyes narrowed slightly, thinking. "Miranda?" "Yeah, she came by once. Quiet, watched the reading, didn't cause trouble." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Did she say why?" Noah shrugged. "Said she was nearby. Wanted to see what we do. Rich people do that sometimes. They like to look. Then they vanish." Ethan nodded slowly. "Did she come back?" Noah shook his head. Not yet. Ethan's jaw clenched. Not yet. The word sat there. He let it go. He moved toward the reading room and stopped outside the door. Children's voices rose and fell. Ava's laugh cut through bright and sharp. Ethan placed his hand on the wall for a moment, as if he could borrow steadiness from the building. Then he stepped inside and opened the book. He read the story. He did the voices. He let the kids interrupt. He let them guess. He let them be loud. He kept his eyes on their faces and tried not to picture letterhead. When the session ended, Ava stayed to help stack chairs. Ethan walked her to the lobby and checked the time. Hot chocolate, Ava reminded him. Not today, Ethan said. Ava pouted. Why not? Ethan kept his voice soft. Because we already did. Last week. Ava's eyes narrowed. That is not fair logic. Ethan almost smiled. It is dad logic. Ava crossed her arms, then dropped them when a little boy ran by with a paper crane in his hand. She watched it like it was a bird that might fly for real. Ethan waited by the glass wall of the hallway, arms folded, pretending he was just resting. He heard the front door bell chime. He heard footsteps. He did not turn until he had to. Miranda walked down the hall. She was alone. No Sophia, no security, just the gray coat and the calm face that looked like it had been practiced in mirrors. She stopped when she saw Ethan and did not pretend surprise. Ethan, she said. His name in her mouth sounded wrong. Too clean, too controlled. Miranda, he replied. For a breath, neither of them moved. The hallway light buzzed overhead. A child's drawing of a sun peeled away from the wall at one corner. Miranda spoke first. I wanted to see the program again. Ethan nodded once. Sure. Miranda held his gaze. You seem upset. Ethan let out a short breath. Do I? Her eyes did not flinch. Yes. Ethan uncrossed his arms. His hands hung at his sides. His gloves made his fingers look bigger, like he could break things by accident. The scholarship, he said. Miranda's face stayed neutral for half a beat too long. Ethan watched it the smallest delay. He had spent his life watching valves and pressure, learning to spot the moment before something gave. You did it, he said. Miranda's eyes softened, but her posture stayed straight. I wanted to help. Ethan's laugh came out sharp, then died. You wanted to help. So, you bought 3 years of my daughter's school. Miranda's jaw tightened. It was anonymous. It was meant to be simple. Simple for who Ethan said. Miranda inhaled. For you. Ethan stepped closer, not threatening, just closing the gap. His voice dropped. You did not ask me. Miranda's eyes held his. I saw a problem. Ethan nodded slowly. That is the thing. You see people, and you see problems. Miranda's throat moved. That is not fair. Ethan's gaze cut to the children's art on the wall, to a crayon drawing of a family holding hands. It is fair, he said. It is accurate. Miranda's hands clasped and unclasped once. Your daughter deserves to stay at that school. Ethan's face tightened. She does. And she would have. We would have figured it out. Miranda's voice stayed calm, but something in it pressed. How? Ethan stared at her. That is none of your business. Miranda's eyes sharpened. I was not trying to insult you. Ethan's voice rose, still controlled, but the edges cut. You were not trying to respect me either. Miranda's lips parted, then closed. Her gaze flicked toward the reading room door where muffled laughter drifted. She lowered her voice. I was grateful, she said. You gave me your seat on the train. Ethan blinked once. That is why. Yes, Miranda said. The word came out almost stubborn. Ethan stared at her, the absurdity of it sparking heat behind his eyes. So, because I stood up for 30 seconds, he said, you decided to rearrange my life. Miranda flinched, a real flinch this time, small but visible. Ethan leaned in slightly. Do you know what the hardest part was after Rachel died? He asked. Miranda's eyes softened. She did not answer. Ethan kept going anyway. It was not the grief, he said. It was people looking at me like I was broken, like my life was a story they could feel good about, like if they handed me something they got to walk away cleaner. Miranda's breath caught quiet. Ethan's voice stayed low. I am not a charity case, he said. I am a father. Miranda's eyes held his. The hallway light made them look paler than they had on the train. I did not mean to take anything from you, she said. You did, Ethan replied. You took the choice. Miranda swallowed. The control in her face wavered. I am sorry, she said, and the words were not polished. They sounded like they hurt her mouth. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. The center around them kept moving. A door opened. A child ran past. Someone called for Noah. Ethan's shoulders lowered a fraction. Not forgiveness, just the release of a breath he had been holding. The scholarship stays, he said. Miranda's eyes widened slightly. Ethan nodded once toward the reading room. Ava earned it, he said. Even if you bought it. Miranda's mouth tightened, pain and relief mixed together. Ethan stepped back and turned toward the door. His hand found the knob. "But we are done," he said without looking back. Miranda's voice came quick. "Ethan, I did not come here to hurt you." Ethan paused with his palm on the knob. He did not turn. "Then learn to ask," he said. He opened the door and stepped into the reading room. Ava looked up from a stack of books. Her eyes found his face, and her smile faltered. "You okay?" she asked. Ethan forced his mouth into something that could pass for calm. "Yeah," he said. "Come on, we're heading out." Ava glanced past him toward the hallway, sensing the shape of things. She did not push. She slid off her chair and hurried to his side, fingers finding his sleeve. Ethan walked her out through the lobby and into the cold. Behind him, Miranda stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by children's drawings taped to cinder-block walls. The buzzing light overhead made everything look a little too stark. She stared at the closed door, then lowered her gaze to her hands. They were empty. Miranda stayed in the hallway long after Ethan and Ava left. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead with a thin, nervous sound. A corner of a child's drawing peeled from the cinder-block wall and fluttered when someone opened the lobby door. The air smelled like cocoa and wet wool and a faint chemical clean that never quite covered the life underneath it. She looked at her hands again. Empty. She had walked in with a plan even if she did not admit it to herself. Plans lived in her muscles. They lived in the way she held her shoulders, the way she spoke in complete sentences that left no room for question marks. Ethan had not raised his voice. He had not needed to. He had simply stood there and refused to bend, and the refusal had scraped something raw inside her. Noah passed by with a stack of forms. He slowed when he saw her. "You okay?" he asked. Miranda's throat worked. Yes. Noah did not believe her, but he did not press. He nodded once the way people do when they have seen enough to know they are not invited further. He walked away, sneakers squeaking on the floor. Miranda turned toward the exit and walked out into the cold. The wind slapped her cheeks. Her eyes watered. She did not wipe them. She crossed the street past the fence and the orange mesh and the words "Keep Our Homes" that looked less like a slogan and more like a grip. Her car waited at the curb. Sophia sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel posture straight. She watched Miranda approach in the side mirror. Miranda opened the rear door and slid in. The heat hit her face. The quiet inside the car felt too controlled. Sophia glanced back. How did it go? Miranda stared out the window. A man on the corner sold tamales from a cooler steam rising when he lifted the lid. A woman in a knit cap handed him cash, her other hand holding a child close. Miranda's voice came out low, badly. Sophia did not react. She waited. Miranda swallowed. "I made it worse." Sophia's gaze stayed forward. "Do you want me to fix it?" Miranda's mouth tightened. The word "fix" turned her stomach. "No," Miranda said. "Not like that." Sophia nodded once small. "Okay." The car pulled away. The community center disappeared behind traffic. Back at the tower, Miranda stepped into the lobby and felt the temperature change warm and curated. The marble floor shone. The fountain murmured obedient. People moved around her with subtle deference eyes flicking toward her face, bodies shifting to create a path. She stopped. The path formed anyway, like a habit she could not turn off. Miranda walked through it, feeling every inch of it like a bruise. She rode the elevator up alone. The mirrored walls showed her face from 3 angles. She looked composed. She looked like someone who never lost. In her office, the paper crane sat on her desk, where she had left it white against dark wood. She stared at it for a long moment, then picked it up carefully, as if it could tear. She held it in her palm and felt the creases press into her skin. The first meeting of the afternoon began without her. For years, that would have been unthinkable. Her calendar was a spine. Every appointment was a vertebra. Miss one, and the whole thing felt like it might collapse. Miranda stood at the window instead and watched the city move. From this height, the streets looked clean, almost orderly. She knew better. She knew what it smelled like under the train tracks. She knew what the wind did between buildings. She knew what it felt like to stand in a crowded car and be invisible. Her phone buzzed. Sophia's name flashed on the screen. Miranda answered. "Yes." Sophia's voice was calm. "Legal is asking if you want to proceed with the demolition timeline." Miranda's fingers tightened around the crane. "No." A pause. No as in delay, or no as in revise. Miranda stared at the grid of streets. Revise. Sophia inhaled slowly. "They will ask what changed." Miranda's voice stayed even. "Tell them I asked a question and I did not like the answer." Sophia did not argue. Understood. Miranda ended the call and kept watching the city. Her reflection hovered faintly in the glass, a ghost layered over the streets. She thought of Ethan's face when he said, "You took the choice." The sentence had landed with the force of something true and long overdue. She set the crane down beside her pen and sat at her desk. When the board meeting started the next morning, she arrived on time. Her posture was the same, her suit was the same, her face was the same. The men around the table relaxed into their assumptions. Miranda listened to the usual reports: profit margins, investor sentiment, construction schedules. She let them speak until they thought that the room belonged to them. Then she opened her folder. "I want the relocation plan rewritten," she said. The general counsel blinked. "Written how?" Miranda looked at him. "With names." He stared. "With names?" "Yes," Miranda said. "Not actual names, but households, real counts, children, elderly, disabilities, work hours, commute times, where they go if we move them, how long it takes them to get back to their jobs, their schools." The CFO shifted in his chair. "That information is not always available." Miranda nodded. "Then we should find out." A man 2 seats down laughed softly, like it was a joke. He stopped when Miranda did not smile. The room went quiet in a new way, not respectful yet, curious-edged. The COO leaned forward. "Miranda, we have compliance covered. We are within requirements." Miranda's gaze did not leave him. "Requirements are a floor," she said, "not a ceiling." The COO's mouth tightened. "This is not charity." Miranda felt the word charity scrape her throat. She thought of Ethan saying, "I'm not a charity case." She kept her voice flat. "It is not charity to keep people from falling." The board members exchanged glances. Sophia sat behind Miranda, expression blank, eyes attentive. The meeting moved on. Decisions slowed. Questions multiplied. People left the room with polite smiles and tight jaws. Later that week, one of the senior analysts pulled Sophia aside in the hall. "Is she all right?" he asked. Sophia's smile was small and professional. "She is all right. Because she is making strange calls," he said, lowering his voice. "Soft calls." Sophia's smile did not change. "She is making deliberate calls." He frowned, not understanding. Sophia walked away. Miranda felt the whispers anyway. They lived in the pauses when she entered a room. They lived in the way people watched her hands as if looking for tremor. She did not correct them. She sat with the discomfort, the way you sat with a hard truth that did not offer you a way out. Across the city, Ethan sat at his kitchen table and stared at the acceptance form for the scholarship. Ava swung her legs under her chair. Her homework lay open beside her. She was supposed to be practicing spelling words. She had written dinosaur instead of Wednesday twice and looked proud of herself. Ethan held the pen and did not sign. Ava watched his face. "You said it stays?" she said. Ethan's jaw tightened. "It stays." "Then sign it," Ava said, simple. Ethan looked at her. Her eyes were steady, too steady. Kids learned what steadiness cost by watching. He set the pen down. "I will," he said. "I just need you to understand something." Ava leaned forward. "Okay." Ethan searched for the right words. Words were not his tool. He used wrenches. He used tape. He used time. "I got mad," he said. Ava nodded. "I know." Ethan's throat tightened. "I was not mad about the money." Ava blinked. "But money is important." "It is," Ethan said. "I was mad because someone did something big for us without asking if we wanted it that way." Ava frowned. "Why would we not want it?" Ethan rubbed his thumb along the pen cap until it clicked once. "Because sometimes help can make you feel small." Ava stared at him. She took her time. Then she said, "But you are not small." Ethan's eyes stung. He looked down quickly. Ava added quieter, maybe she did not know how to ask. The sentence landed in the room like a soft object thrown hard. Ethan froze. Ava shrugged one shoulder, as if she had not just cracked something open. "Grown-ups are weird." Ethan let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. He picked up the pen again. His hand shook once, then steadied. He signed. Ava grinned, relief flooding her face. She reached across the table and touched his wrist. "Thank you," she said, like she knew it cost him. Ethan covered her hand for a beat, then let go. 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived by certified mail. Ethan knew before he opened it. The return address belonged to a law office in River North, the kind with frosted glass and a receptionist who spoke with a smile you could hear through the phone. He sat down at the table and slid his finger under the flap. The letter inside was polite. It was also sharp. Request for mediation. Concerns regarding stability. Offer of support. A paragraph about Ava's best interests. A line about visitation. A suggestion that Ethan consider a shared custody arrangement to avoid further action. Ethan felt his face go hot. His hands clenched around the paper until it crumpled. He forced them to relax. Crumpling it would not make it less real. Ava wandered in from the bedroom with her stuffed triceratops tucked under one arm. She looked at his face and stopped. "What is it?" she asked. Ethan smoothed the paper quickly, but the crease stayed. "Nothing you need to worry about," he said. Ava did not move. "Is it Grandma Helen?" Ethan stared at her. "How do you know?" Ava shrugged. "She sends letters. They smell like perfume." Ethan's mouth twitched despite himself. Ava's nose was too good. Ava's eyes were too good. He folded the letter and set it aside. "She wants to talk," he said. Ava's expression tightened. "Do I have to?" Ethan reached for her hand. "No." Ava's shoulders dropped a small release. Then she asked, "Are you scared?" Ethan did not want to lie to her. He also did not want to hand her fear. He chose the truth he could carry. "I am angry," he said. Ava nodded once. "Okay." Ethan looked at her small and sturdy in her oversized sweatshirt. "But I am not leaving," he said. Ava stepped closer and leaned into his side. Ethan wrapped an arm around her and held her there until his heartbeat slowed. That night, after Ava went to bed, Ethan walked to the Pilsen family hub instead of going straight home from work. The center was quieter at night. A few lights were still on. The lobby smelled like floor cleaner and old books. Noah sat behind the folding table with a stack of paperwork and a mug of coffee that looked like it had been reheated too many times. Noah looked up. "You look like somebody kicked your dog," he said. Ethan set the letter on the table. "They sent this." Noah read it, his face changing as he moved down the page. He slid it back. "They got money," he said softly. "They got lawyers." Ethan nodded. "Yeah?" Noah leaned back in his chair. "We have a legal aid clinic that partners with us. Thursdays. They do family stuff. Custody housing benefits. They are good." Ethan stared at the paper. "I cannot lose her." Noah's voice stayed steady. "Then do not do it alone." Ethan swallowed. The words hit him in a place that did not like kneading. "I can handle my life," Ethan said more to himself than to Noah. Noah nodded. "I know you can. Handling it does not mean you cannot use tools." Ethan looked up. "Tools." Noah tapped the letter. "This is a tool. A nasty one. Get your own tools." Ethan nodded once. He stood, but before he turned to go, he glanced at the wall of children's art. A paper crane was taped there now, wings spread, colored in with marker. Someone had drawn eyes on it. It looked surprised. Ethan felt his chest tighten and relax at the same time. He went home and checked on Ava. She slept curled around her triceratops. Her purple hair clip gleamed faintly on the nightstand. Ethan stood there longer than he meant to, listening to her breathe. At the same hour, Miranda sat alone in her office, with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. She did not drink it. She watched the surface reflect the ceiling light, a dark mirror. Sophia entered quietly and placed a folder on the desk. "Revised relocation options," she said. "Legal will not like it. Finance will like it less." Miranda did not look up at the folder right away. Her fingers rested near the paper crane. She traced one fold slow. "Do we have the impact breakdown?" "You asked for?" Sophia asked. Miranda nodded. "Not enough." Sophia hesitated. "The board is asking if you are losing focus." Miranda finally lifted her gaze. "I am finding it." Sophia's expression did not change, but her eyes softened for a breath. Miranda opened the folder and read. Halfway through, she stopped and pressed her fingertips to the page as if she could hold the words in place. "Get me the community relations director," she said. Sophia blinked. "Tonight?" "Yes," Miranda said. Sophia nodded and stepped back toward the door. Before she left, she glanced at the crane. "You kept it," Sophia said almost to herself. Miranda's voice was quiet. "It reminds me to keep my hands open." Sophia left. The door clicked shut. The city glowed outside the window, distant and busy, as if it had never heard of shame or custody letters or paper birds. Miranda reached into her drawer and pulled out a plain pad of stationery, the kind without a logo. She set it on the desk beside the crane and stared at the blank page until her eyes started to burn. Miranda stared at the blank stationery until the white of it began to feel loud. The paper crane sat to her right, its sharp folds catching the desk lamp like tiny blades of light. The cold coffee in her mug held a dark reflection of the ceiling. Her phone stayed face down. The city glowed outside the glass, bright and indifferent traffic sliding along the river like it had its own pulse. She picked up her pen. Her hand hovered, then stopped. Writing was different from signing. Signing was a gesture she had repeated so often it lived in muscle memory. Writing asked for something messier. Miranda set the pen down again and opened the top drawer of her desk. Inside were things she rarely touched: spare keys, a Metro card, a small tin of paper clips, and a photo she kept turned face down. She flipped the photo over. A younger Miranda stood on a patchy lawn in Ohio, hair pulled back, cheeks wind-burned. Her father stood beside her with a mower handle in his hands, his shoulders broad under a faded work shirt. The grass around them looked uneven, like the mower had stalled twice. An old woman sat on a porch step behind them, with a blanket over her knees, smiling, as if she could not believe anyone would do this for her. Miranda did not remember who had taken the photo. She remembered the feel of the mower handle when her father let her push it, how it had vibrated into her palms and made her arms ache. She remembered the smell of cut grass and gasoline. She remembered her father wiping sweat with the back of his wrist, then saying almost offhand, "You help because it is right, not because it pays." She turned the photo face down again. The pen felt heavier when she picked it up the second time. She wrote slowly, the first line uneven. "Ethan." She paused. The simple use of his name felt like stepping into a room without knocking. She kept going. "I owe you an apology, the kind that does not hide behind money or good intentions. I did something for your daughter without asking you, and you were right to be angry. I took your choice. I did not mean to, but meaning is not the same as doing." Her handwriting tightened on the last word. She forced her fingers to relax. "My father worked in a factory in Ohio. He came home tired and smelled like metal. Every Sunday he mowed our elderly neighbor's lawn because she could not do it and she could not pay anyone. He did it without telling anyone. He said it was just the right thing. I believed him. I built my company believing that too, at least at the start. Somewhere along the way I began to confuse helping with controlling. It was easier. It was faster. It made me feel safe." She stopped. The sentence looked too honest on the page. She almost scratched it out. Instead, she underlined, "Nothing changed, nothing. On the train you gave me your seat. You did not know who I was. You did not ask what it would get you. You just saw someone who looked like she needed to sit down, and you stood up. That should not have mattered as much as it did. It did." Miranda's throat tightened. She kept writing anyway. "I do not want to send you another gift. I do not want to be your benefactor. I do not want you to be a story I tell myself so I can sleep at night. I want to ask you something, and I want you to say no if the answer is no. We are launching a program through Kincaid Meridian to partner with neighborhoods affected by development. It is meant to be practical, not public relations. I need someone to run the work on the ground. Someone who actually knows what families need when the rent goes up, when childcare falls through, when a system smiles and says it is within requirements. Someone who can tell us the truth when we are wrong." The words came quicker now, as if the page had finally opened. "The position is paid, the hours are flexible. It is work, not charity. I cannot pretend my company has not caused harm. I can say I want to build something that does less of it. I can say I need help doing that. Not help in the way I tried to give it to you. Help the right way if there is one. If you are willing, come to my office. You can bring your daughter if you need to. If you do not want to come, do not. I will respect that. Either way, thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be treated like a person." Miranda read the pages twice. She did not like the line about being treated like a person. It sounded like it wanted sympathy. She crossed it out, then wrote a shorter version in the margin. "Thank you for treating me like I mattered for a moment when no one else did." She signed only her first name, Miranda. She sat back and stared at the ink until it dried. Then she folded the letter with care, sharp creases almost like Ava's crane folds, though Miranda's were clumsier. She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a small envelope. Plain. No logo. She slipped the letter inside. After a hesitation, she reached for the paper crane on her desk. Her fingers paused over it. The crane belonged to Ava. It had been given, not taken. Miranda did not want to steal it into her own story. Still, she needed a reminder that her hands could hold something delicate without crushing it. She did not put Ava's crane in the envelope. Instead, she took a scrap of paper from the stationery pad and tried to fold her own. Her first attempt sagged. The wings looked uneven, the neck bent too far. She tried again. The second crane was still awkward, but it held its shape. Miranda slid it into the envelope behind the letter, then sealed it. When Sophia came in later, Miranda held the envelope out. "Mail this," Miranda said. Sophia took it and turned it once, reading the plain address. "No courier." "Mail," Miranda repeated. Sophia studied Miranda's face, then nodded. "Okay." Miranda watched Sophia leave with the envelope in her hand and felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not relief, not power, something quieter, like waiting without pulling a string. 3 days later, the letter arrived in Bridgeport. Ethan saw the envelope on the mat when he came home from work. Ava was at the table doing homework, pencil in her mouth, legs swinging. The neighbor who watched her during the afternoon waved from the doorway and left with a tired smile. Ethan picked up the envelope and turned it over. No logo, no law firm, no school letterhead, just his name in neat handwriting and a stamp in the corner. Ava craned her neck. Is that from Grandma Helen? Ethan's mouth tightened. No. Ava slid off her chair and followed him into the kitchen. She hovered at his elbow like she wanted to climb him. Open it, she said. Ethan washed his hands first. He did not know why. He just needed a step between his day and whatever was inside the envelope. He tore it open carefully. The paper smelled faintly like ink and something clean. Not perfume, not the sharp scent of office toner. Something more human. He read the first paragraph and felt his stomach drop, not from fear, but from the shock of being addressed directly. No foundation language, no polished corporate phrases. An apology that did not ask to be forgiven. Ava leaned closer. What does it say? Ethan read silently for a minute, then handed it to her. Ava's reading was still slow, but she could catch the shape of words. She traced the lines with her finger lips moving. It says she is sorry, Ava said, squinting. It says she did not mean to take your choice. Ethan watched her face as she read the way her brow wrinkled when a sentence was longer, the way her eyes sharpened when she understood. He looked at her and saw Rachel's attention, that ability to find the tender part of things. Ava pointed at a line. Neighborhood program, she read. She wants you to work. Ethan swallowed. Yeah. Ava looked up. Is that good? Ethan did not answer right away. He kept reading. The job offer was not on glossy paper. It did not promise the world. It offered something he had not had in years, a steady salary, flexible hours, a role that sounded like it mattered in a way he recognized. He reached the part about bringing Ava if he needed to. His throat tightened. Ava tapped the little folded crane that slid out of the envelope and landed on the table. She made one, Ava said, surprised. It is not as good as mine. Ethan almost smiled. No, he said, it is not. Ava turned the crooked crane in her hands, but she tried. Ethan stared at the letter. He thought about the scholarship. He thought about the way Miranda's face had flinched when he said she had taken the choice. He thought about the custody letter from River North and the way it sat like a weight on his counter. He thought about Noah's words. Tools. Ava set the crooked crane down gently, like it could break. Are you still mad? She asked. Ethan looked at her. I am not as mad. Ava nodded, satisfied, then added, if you go talk to her, you should make her ask the right way. Ethan let out a quiet breath. You think so? Ava rolled her eyes. Yes. Because grown-ups are weird. Ethan looked down at the letter again. He folded it carefully the way he folded bills into piles when he was trying to make numbers behave. Go finish your spelling, he said. Ava hesitated. You are going to go. Ethan did not promise. He did not deny it either. Go, he repeated. Ava trotted back to the table, humming under her breath. Ethan stood at the counter with the letter and felt a slow, reluctant shift inside him. Not trust. Not yet. Something like curiosity and something like caution braided together. He called the number at the bottom of the page. Sophia answered on the second ring. Kincaid Meridian. Ethan cleared his throat. This is Ethan Miller. A pause. Quick. Mr. Miller? Yes, one moment. Music filled his ear-soft piano that sounded expensive. Ethan stared at his sink, at the chipped enamel near the drain, at a scratch that had been there since he moved in. The line clicked. Miranda's voice came through low and steady. Ethan. He did not like how easily she said his name. He kept his tone flat. I got your letter. I am glad, Miranda said. Her voice held no triumph. Ethan tightened his grip on the phone. I will come in. A beat, all right. He named a day and a time. Miranda accepted it. No bargaining, no pushing. When the call ended, Ethan stood in his kitchen for a long moment, phone still in his hand, as if he expected it to ring again. On the morning of the meeting, Ethan took Ava to school as usual, then went to work long enough to cover the basics. He told Dennis he needed the afternoon off. Dennis squinted. You got court. Ethan's jaw tightened. No. Dennis shrugged. Whatever. Just do not make it a habit. Ethan did not answer. He picked Ava up at 3 and brought her home, then took her to the neighbor's apartment with a bag of snacks and her homework folder. You will be fine, he told her. Ava looked up at him serious. You will be fine too. Ethan swallowed. Yeah. He rode the train into the loop and walked to the Kincaid Meridian Tower. The lobby was warm and bright and smelled faintly like polished stone. People in suits moved with purpose. Ethan's boots sounded too loud against the marble. A security guard glanced at Ethan's jacket and then at the visitor list on his screen. His posture changed when he saw the name. Mr. Miller, the guard said, suddenly careful. Elevator on the right. Ethan's stomach tightened. He hated that. He hated how a name could make the world rearrange. He stepped into the elevator and rode up, watching the floor numbers climb. The higher he went, the quieter it felt, as if the building had less life and more air. Sophia met him at the elevator and led him down a hallway lined with framed photographs. Miranda cut ribbons. Miranda shook hands. Miranda stood beside glossy renderings of buildings that did not exist yet. Sophia opened a door. She is inside. Ethan stepped in. Miranda stood by the window with her hands behind her back. She turned when he entered. No smile, no apology on her face this time, just attention. "Thank you for coming," she said. Ethan stayed near the doorway for a moment, taking in the room. The desk, the city view, the chair that looked like it could swallow a person whole. "I did not come for the view," he said. Miranda nodded once. "I know." She gestured to a chair across from the desk. Ethan looked at it, then chose a simpler chair set against the wall, the kind meant for quick meetings. He sat there instead. Miranda's eyes flicked to the choice. She did not comment. She sat on the edge of her own chair, not reclining. "I read your letter," Ethan said. Miranda's fingers clasped, then released. "Okay." Ethan held her gaze. "I do not know if I believe you." Miranda did not flinch. "That is fair." Ethan's throat tightened. He had expected defense. He had expected a pitch. The calm acceptance made him more uneasy, not less. He pulled the letter out of his jacket pocket and set it on the desk between them. The paper looked small on the polished wood. "You offered me a job," he said. "Yes," Miranda replied. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "I have conditions." Miranda nodded. "Say them." Ethan's voice stayed steady. "I will not be a prop. I will not sit in rooms and smile while people congratulate themselves for caring." Miranda's expression did not change. "Agreed." Ethan blinked once. He went on. "If I take this job, I do the work with real families, not just reports. I make decisions, not recommendations that get ignored." Miranda nodded again. "Agreed." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And I cannot report to you." A small pause. Miranda's eyes sharpened. "Why?" "Because if I report to you, I will spend every day wondering whether I can tell you the truth," Ethan said. "I need to be able to say you are wrong without worrying about my paycheck." Miranda leaned back slightly. The leather chair creaked. For a moment, her face showed something close to instinct, the reflex to hold the chain. Then she took a breath and let it go. "You will report to the head of community relations," she said. "Not to me." Ethan studied her. "You will not override that." Miranda met his eyes. "I will not." Silence held for a beat. Outside the window, the city moved, cars threading the streets like veins. Ethan's voice softened a fraction. "Why are you doing this?" Miranda glanced down at the letter on her desk, then at the paper crane crook that she had placed near her pen. Ethan's gaze followed and landed on it. Miranda spoke quietly. "Because I do not know how to be in a room with people without trying to manage them. And I am tired of living that way." Ethan watched her for a long moment. He thought of Ava saying, maybe she did not know how to ask. He thought of Miranda standing alone in that hallway at the community center, hands empty. He exhaled once. "I am not promising anything," Ethan said. Miranda nodded. "I am not asking for a promise." Ethan stood. He did not reach for her hand yet. "I will try," he said, and the words felt heavy and honest. Miranda rose as well. She extended her hand, careful, not assuming. Ethan hesitated, then took it. Her grip was firm, not aggressive. He felt a faint tremor in her fingers, quickly controlled. Sophia appeared at the door with a folder. Miranda did not call for her. Sophia simply knew when to enter. She handed the folder to Ethan. "Details," Sophia said. "Salary, schedule, reporting structure, everything in writing." Ethan nodded once and tucked it under his arm. Miranda looked at him. "Thank you," she said. Ethan did not answer with kindness or anger. He simply nodded, then turned and walked out of the office. In the elevator down, he held the folder against his chest. The paper inside was heavier than the scholarship letter had been, heavier in a different way. He watched the floor numbers drop and listened to his own breathing. On the street, the wind hit him hard. He pulled his collar up and started walking toward the station, shoulders squared, steps steady, the city noise rising around him like water. Ethan took the stairs down into the station and let the heat of bodies and metal swallow him. The platform smelled like damp wool and old electricity. A train roared through on the far track and shook dust from the beams overhead. He kept one hand on the folder Sophia had given him, pressed to his chest like it might drift away. The other hand held the rail as the crowd shifted. He did not look up at the ads. He watched shoes the edge of the platform, the small movements people made when they were tired and trying to get home. When the train arrived, he stepped in and found a place to stand near the doors. A seat opened 2 stops later. He did not take it. He stayed standing out of habit, and because the folder felt safer when his body was doing something. At Bridgeport, he climbed out into wind and slush. The sky had dropped lower. Streetlights flicked on early. He walked to the neighbor's apartment and knocked. Mrs. Delgado opened the door with flour on her hands and a dish towel over her shoulder. The apartment behind her smelled like onions and warm bread. "Ava's finishing her spelling," she said. She got mad at Wednesday again. Ethan stepped inside and felt his shoulders loosen. Ava sat at the kitchen table, pencil tapping, tongue stuck out as she fought the letters into place. "Hey," Ethan said. Ava looked up fast. "Did you do it?" He did not need to ask what she meant. "I talked to her." Ava's eyes widened, and Ethan held up the folder. "And I might have a new job." Mrs. Delgado glanced at him, then at the folder, then back to his face. She did not ask questions. She just nodded like she had seen life turn corners before. Ava slid off her chair and walked to him serious. "Do you still fix pipes?" "Not like I used to," Ethan said. Ava frowned. "Then what do you fix?" Ethan looked at her for a moment. He had no clean answer that fit in a kid's mouth. "Problems," he said finally. Ava stared, then nodded like that made sense. "Okay. Can I still go to Pilsen?" "Yes," Ethan said. "We still go." Ava's shoulders dropped in relief. She grabbed her backpack and waved at Mrs. Delgado, then followed Ethan down the stairs and out into the cold. At home, Ethan made dinner without thinking about it. Pasta jar sauce, a side of frozen peas he forced into the pot because Ava needed green things. Ava did homework at the table, humming the scholarship letter, now tucked in a drawer like it belonged there. When she went to bed, Ethan sat alone at the table and opened Sophia's folder. Everything was there in clean type: salary, benefits, reporting line to Community Relations Director Diane Mercer, a start date, a list of responsibilities that sounded like a different language: stakeholder engagement, impact metrics, neighborhood partnerships. Ethan read it twice, then took a pen and wrote his own translation in the margin. "Talk to people, listen, bring back the truth. Do not let them turn it into a story." He went to the drawer and pulled out Ava's paper crane. He set it on the table beside the folder, a small white bird next to corporate ink. It looked out of place and stubborn. On his last day at the tower on Wacker, Dennis shook his hand without warmth. "You sure you want to do this?" Dennis asked, eyes flicking to Ethan's boots. "Maintenance is steady." Ethan nodded. "So is drowning." Dennis snorted, then looked away. "Yeah, all right, good luck." Tommy clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "When you get rich, buy me lunch." Ethan managed a half smile. "I already owe you lunch." "You do," Tommy said, grinning. "And do not forget us, little people." Ethan looked at the polished lobby one last time at the fountain that whispered for no one, then walked out the service door and into the wind. His first day at Kincaid Meridian started with a badge that felt too light for the building. Sophia met him at security and handed him a visitor pass, even though his name was already in the system. "Diane is expecting you," Sophia said. Ethan followed her into a smaller set of offices off the main corridor. Less glass, more carpet, the air smelling faintly of toner and microwaved lunches. A woman stood when they entered, mid-40s, sharp bob haircut eyes that had learned how to be kind without being fooled. "Ethan Miller," she said. "Diane Mercer." Ethan shook her hand. "Ethan is fine." Diane smiled. Of course it is. Her office had a window, but the view was only the neighboring building's brick wall. Ethan liked that immediately. Diane slid a folder across her desk. "Welcome. I'm going to be direct. This job has been attempted before in different forms. Sometimes it becomes public relations. Sometimes it becomes a grant machine. Miranda wants it different." Ethan kept his face blank. "And you?" Diane held his gaze. "I want it useful. Useful is messy." Ethan nodded once. "Good." Diane leaned forward. "You are not here to make anyone feel better. You are here to tell us what is true. That will make people angry." Ethan let out a short breath. "I have practice." Diane walked him through the week. Meeting site visits, a neighborhood roundtable in Pilsen scheduled for Thursday night at the community center. Ethan's stomach tightened at the word Pilsen, but he nodded. At 10, he sat in his first internal meeting. The room smelled like coffee and dry markers. A whiteboard listed goals in neat handwriting. Two people spoke in the polished rhythm Ethan had heard in elevators for years. "We need to manage expectations," a man said. "We can offer a stipend and a referral pipeline." A woman nodded. "We should emphasize opportunity, revitalization, partnership." Ethan listened until the words began to blur, then cleared his throat. They turned toward him like he had made a sound in church. "You can call it whatever you want," Ethan said. "It still moves people out of their homes." Silence. Someone blinked. Someone looked down at their notes. Diane did not rescue him. She simply said, "Ethan, tell us what you think." Ethan felt heat rise in his face. He hated being the point of focus. He forced himself to keep talking. You want to manage expectations, he said. Start by not lying to yourselves. People hear revitalization and they hear rent going up. They hear their kids switching schools. They hear longer commutes. They hear goodbye. The man's jaw tightened. We are within compliance. Ethan nodded. So is a landlord who raises rent the legal amount every year until you leave. The man stared at him. Diane's pen scratched lightly on paper. No interruption. Ethan exhaled. If you want partnership, you have to show up before the bulldozers. And you have to show up more than once. The woman across the table studied him. And you think they will talk to us? Ethan shrugged. They will talk if you are ready to hear things you will not like. By the end of the meeting, the whiteboard had fewer slogans and more questions. Diane walked him back to his desk. You just made 2 departments hate you, she said, tone dry. Ethan pulled his chair out. Only 2. Diane's smile flashed. All right, let's go meet people. On Thursday, Ethan took the train down to Pilsen in the late afternoon, carrying a stack of printed flyers that felt useless in his hands. Outside the station, the air smelled like grilled meat and damp pavement. Murals blazed across brick walls, bright against the gray. He walked to the Pilsen family hub and pushed through the door. The bell chimed. Warm air hit him. The lobby looked the same as always, flyers layered mittens and a bin drawings peeling at the corners. Noah stood at the folding table and lifted his chin when he saw Ethan. No suit, Noah said, relieved. Ethan held up his hands. I tried. It rejected me. Noah snorted. Good. Ava ran in from the hallway when she heard Ethan's voice. She launched herself into his side, then pulled back and stared at his face. You are wearing a new badge, she said. Ethan glanced down. The badge hung from his pocket clip. Yeah. Ava's eyes narrowed in suspicion. Does it make you bossy? Ethan let out a soft laugh. It better not. Noah pointed toward the back room. They're coming soon, he said. Some parents already showed. Ethan nodded. His chest tightened. Miranda coming? Noah's brows rose. Miranda? Ethan's jaw clenched. Yeah. Noah studied him. You okay? Ethan breathed out. I do not know. I will be. The meeting started in the multi-purpose room, chairs in a loose circle. The air smelled like coffee that had been reheated too many times, and the faint sweetness of cocoa from the kids' corner. People filed in wearing work clothes and tired faces. A woman with a toddler on her hip. A man in a mechanic shirt. An older couple holding hands like a habit. Diane arrived first, coat damp hair slightly frizzed from wind. She greeted Noah, then Ethan, then sat down in a plastic chair without comment. 5 minutes later, the room shifted. Miranda Kincaid walked in. No entourage, no Sophia, no cameras. Just the gray coat and a calm face that looked like it had been rebuilt and set back on. Some people recognized her anyway, not by name, but by the way the air changed around certain kinds of power. Miranda did not stand in the center. She did not speak first. She found an empty plastic chair near the wall and sat. The chair squeaked under her. She stayed. Ethan watched her take the seat, watched her place her hands on her knees, palms down like she was keeping them still on purpose. Noah opened the meeting with a few words, practical and warm. Then he nodded to Ethan. Ethan stood. His throat tightened. He looked at the faces in the circle and felt the weight of what they had already given up just by showing up. My name is Ethan Miller, he said. I work with Kincaid Meridian now. A murmur ran through the room, sharp and distrustful. Ethan kept going. I am not here to sell you anything. I am here to listen and bring back what you say exactly as you say it. A woman in the front crossed her arms. You going to bring it back to her? She said, chin jerking toward Miranda. Ethan glanced at Miranda. She did not move. She did not smile. I bring it back to the company, Ethan said, including her, yeah. The woman's eyes narrowed. And what changes? Ethan's mouth went dry. He could have offered a promise. He did not. I cannot ask you to trust me, Ethan said. I can ask you to talk anyway. The room held still. Then an older man spoke, voice rough. My landlord already raised my rent, he said. He says new people are coming. He says it is good for the neighborhood. You think it is good when my grandson has to change schools. A younger woman jumped in, words fast. They call it development. It is displacement. It is just a nicer word. Voices layered. Fear, anger, exhaustion. Ethan listened and took notes until his hand cramped. Diane took notes too, head down, eyes sharp. Miranda sat with her hands still on her knees and listened without flinching. But Ethan saw a small muscle jump in her jaw when a man said, You do not see us until you need our land. Halfway through, a mother with a toddler asked, Are you going to pay for childcare when you move us farther from work? The room quieted. Diane inhaled, ready to answer in policy. Ethan spoke first. That is a real question, he said, not a complaint. He looked toward Miranda before he could stop himself. Miranda met his eyes. She did not speak. She nodded once, small. After the meeting, people lingered in knots, talking in low voices. Some avoided Miranda's side of the room. A few stared at her openly, daring her to defend herself. Miranda did not defend. She stayed seated until the last person spoke, then stood and walked to Noah. "Thank you," she said. Noah looked at her like he was measuring the shape of her words. "You heard them." "Yes," Miranda said. Noah's voice stayed neutral. Hearing is easy. Miranda held his gaze. "I know." Outside, the air was colder. Ethan walked with Diane toward the corner notes stuffed into his coat pocket. His shoulders ached. Diane Maxorel. Diane exhaled. That was rough. Ethan nodded. That was honest. Diane looked at him. "You did well." Ethan did not answer. Praise did not land cleanly in him these days. He glanced back toward the center. Miranda stood by the door, coat open slightly, hair tugged loose by wind. She watched a mother adjust a toddler's hat, watched a man help an older woman down the step. She looked like she was trying to memorize something. Miranda turned and caught Ethan's gaze. She did not wave. She simply waited. Ethan walked back. They stood on the sidewalk, the city noise sliding around them. A bus hissed at the curb. Somewhere a dog barked. Miranda spoke first. "You were right," she said. Ethan's throat tightened. "About what?" "About showing up more than once," she said. Ethan nodded once. He did not let it soften him too fast. Miranda looked down at his notebook, edge sticking out of his pocket. "What will you tell them?" Ethan held her gaze. "The truth." Miranda's mouth tightened. "And if the truth costs money?" Ethan's voice stayed flat. "Then it costs money." A beat. Wind pushed between them. Miranda nodded once, and her shoulders dropped a fraction, like she had decided to carry something on purpose. Ethan turned toward the station. His coffee from earlier sat cold in his stomach. His notes felt heavy. In his pocket, his fingers brushed the paper crane Ava had made. He pressed it lightly between thumb and forefinger until the crease lines bit back. He went home that night and set the notebook on the kitchen table. Ava was asleep, the apartment quiet, except for the radiator's soft clicking. Ethan rewrote his notes into a report Diane had asked for, learning the company's language while refusing to let it swallow the people inside it. He typed words like relocation and mitigation, then added plain sentences underneath them. He printed 2 copies. Before he went to bed, he folded a sheet of scrap paper into a crane clumsy at first, then better on the second try. He set it beside the report. The paper bird faced the window wings, spread as if it could hold the room steady until morning. Ethan woke before dawn and reread the report with a mug of coffee that had gone cold halfway through the first page. The words looked too clean on the paper. He had tried to keep them dirty with real life, tried to keep the voices intact. He had typed relocation and mitigation because that was the language the building demanded. Underneath, he had written plain sentences that sounded like people he knew. A single line kept pulling his eyes back. "A family cannot commute on a promise." He set the report down and stared at the paper crane beside it. The wings were uneven, the neck bent a little too far forward. It still held its shape. He tapped it once with his finger, then slipped both report copies into a folder and left the apartment while Ava slept, her stuffed triceratops tucked under her chin like a guard. By 8:30, Ethan sat in a conference room with Diane and 2 directors from finance. A tray of pastries sat untouched in the corner. The room smelled like printer toner and coffee that had been brewed too early. Ethan's hands stayed on the table, fingers interlaced, keeping still. A man in a crisp suit flipped through Ethan's report and made a sound low in his throat. "This reads like a complaint log." Ethan held his gaze. "It is." The man's jaw tightened. "We are not in the business of solving every problem in the city." Ethan nodded once. "Then stop buying neighborhoods like you are." The other director shifted. "We have budgets." Ethan slid his folder forward. "So do the families who will get moved. Their budgets do not expand when yours get tight." Diane did not interrupt. She let the silence stretch until it became pressure. The door opened and Miranda stepped in. She wore a simple gray coat over her suit hair, pinned back, face calm. People straightened without meaning to. Chairs pulled in a little. The air tightened around her, then loosened when she did not take the head seat. She sat along the side of the table, close enough to hear, far enough not to dominate. Miranda looked at the report, then at Ethan. "What are we stuck on?" she asked. The man in the suit forced a polite smile. "Scope, costs." Miranda nodded, and she said, looking at Ethan. Ethan did not soften his words just because she had walked in. "They do not trust us," he said. "They have reasons. If we want partnership, we have to pay for it. Not with checks we never explain. with services they can use on Tuesday morning when their kid is sick and their job will not wait. The director's mouth tightened. That is not our lane. Miranda's eyes stayed on Ethan. What is our lane, she asked. Ethan inhaled. If you build, you own the impact, he said. If you do not want the impact, do not build. The room went still. The man in the suit looked at Miranda, waiting for her to correct Ethan to put him back in the box. Miranda did not. She picked up the report and turned a page slowly. We can either spend money up front or spend it later cleaning up the damage, she said. The difference is whether we pretend the damage is someone else's problem. The finance director tried again, careful. Miranda, investors will not like this. Miranda's expression did not change. Then we will explain it better. Ethan watched her hands as she set the report down. They were steady. Her palm rested briefly on the paper crane Ethan had left clipped to the report's inside pocket, a small marker he had not meant anyone to see. She did not mention it. She simply lifted her hand and kept going. By the end of the meeting, the numbers had shifted. Not enough to make everything easy, enough to make the first center real. The first ribbon cutting did not look like a ribbon cutting. No stage, no podium, no photographers. A cheap pair of scissors from a dollar store and a strip of red fabric tied between two folding chairs outside an old brick storefront near Pilsen. Wind pushed at the fabric and made it snap. Inside, the room smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. The lights were too bright. The chairs were mismatched. A small kitchen held donated plates and a coffee machine that sputtered when it was nervous. The walls were still bare except for the first layer of children's drawings taped up crooked. Ethan stood by the door with a clipboard. His jacket was clean. His hands still looked like work. Diane walked the room checking details. Noah stood near the entrance, grinning like he had been holding his breath for months. Miranda arrived without fanfare. She stepped in and stopped taking in the room like she was trying to see what it would feel like when it was full. People looked up, some with suspicion, some with curiosity. Miranda nodded at them, as if she were entering their house, not the other way around. Ava ran in from the back, holding a stack of flyers, and nearly collided with Ethan's legs. She was taller now, 10, all elbows and speed hair, pulled back in a ponytail she tied herself. The purple dinosaur backpack was gone, replaced by a canvas tote covered in marker signatures from her book drive. "Dad," she said breathless, "we need tape. The sign keeps falling." Ethan looked down at her and felt the familiar warmth shift in his chest. "Top drawer," he said. Ava nodded and sprinted off. Miranda watched her go. She did not smile widely. Her face softened anyway, the smallest change. "She's grown," Miranda said. Ethan kept his eyes on the room, on the people filtering in, on the way a mother hesitated at the doorway before stepping inside. "She pays attention," he said. Miranda's gaze moved over the chairs, the bulletin boards, the corner, with children's books stacked in milk crates. "So do you," she replied. Ethan did not answer. He did not know what to do with compliments that sounded like recognition instead of leverage. When the room filled, no one made a speech. People asked where to sign up. A woman asked about childcare hours. A man asked if the job training was real or just a flyer. A teenager asked if there would be tutoring after school. Ethan answered what he could and wrote down what he could not. Miranda sat in a plastic chair in the back and listened. She took notes on a pad without a logo. Once a father in a mechanic shirt turned toward her and said, "You going to keep showing up?" Miranda met his eyes. "Yes," she said. No explanation, no defense, just the word. The centers opened one by one after that. Not perfect, not smooth. Some weeks the printer broke and the phones rang without anyone picking up. Some weeks a staff member quit, and Ethan filled the gap with too many hours and a jaw tight from holding it together. Some days he went home with cold coffee in his stomach and a stack of forms that felt like bricks. Ava started spending Saturdays in the reading room, helping younger kids pick books, telling them which ones had dinosaurs, which ones had brave girls, which ones were funny in the middle, even if the beginning was sad. She grew into a quiet kind of fierce. Miranda kept coming, not always for the fun parts. Sometimes for the angry meetings. Sometimes for the long ones, where nobody thanked her for sitting in the hard chair. Ethan saw her learn how to let other people finish their sentences. He saw her ask questions and wait for answers, without reaching for a solution too fast. On a Tuesday morning in late October, Ethan rode the Brown Line alone. Ava was already at school, probably arguing with a teacher about whether a pterodactyl counted as a dinosaur. Ethan sat by the window, coffee in a paper cup that stayed hot long enough to steam the glass when he breathed near it. The train was crowded but not packed. People swayed with the turns, faces half awake, eyes pointed inward. At 53rd Street, a young man stepped on. Mid-20s, shoulders slumped, eyes red around the edges like he had slept in fragments. His clothes were clean but worn. He looked at the empty seat beside Ethan, then moved toward it and stopped. An older woman had boarded behind him, breathing hard grocery bag cutting into her fingers. She paused near the doors, shifting the bag from one hand to the other, like she was testing pain. The young man looked at the seat again. Then he stepped back and gestured toward it. "Go ahead," he said. "You look like you need it." The woman blinked, surprised, then smiled. "Thank you, honey," she said, and sat with a sigh that sounded like relief spilling out. The young man stood by the door, one hand on the pole. He stared at the floor as if he did not want credit for the thing he had just done. Ethan watched the exchange and felt something move in his chest, small and warm. He kept his face neutral. He kept his coffee steady. Across the car near the far doors, Miranda stood in her gray coat. She had no briefcase, no entourage, no visible hurry. She watched the same small scene Ethan had watched. When the woman sat down and the young man stepped aside, Miranda's shoulders lowered a fraction, as if she had exhaled without realizing she was holding air. Her eyes lifted and met Ethan's across the crowded car. No surprise, no apology, no need to say anything. They held the look for a beat, long enough to recognize each other, long enough to recognize the thing that had passed between strangers without anyone asking for it. The next stop came. The doors opened with a hiss. Miranda stepped off into the flow of commuters and disappeared among coats and backpacks and faces that did not turn. Ethan stayed on until his stop, then climbed the stairs to street level. The air outside was crisp. Leaves along the avenue had turned gold and brown, stuck to the sidewalk in damp patches. He walked toward the center, hands in his pockets, coffee cup empty, now fingers brushing the edge of a folded paper crane he kept there without thinking. At the Pilson family hub, the bell chimed when he pushed through the door. Warm air hit his face. The lobby smelled like cocoa and crayons and something fried from a food cart outside. A child's drawing fluttered on the wall, where tape had started to lose its grip. Ethan walked to the folding table in the back room, set down his bag, and opened his notebook. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.